Welcome to the Somehow Together podcast, where we explore faith, connection, and everything that holds us together. I'm Miranda.
And I'm Erica.
You know, life is messy.
Relationships are messy.
But we weren't meant to do life alone.
And God is still at work in the middle of it all.
So we're still showing up somehow together. Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of Somehow Together. Today, Erica and I are going to be talking about something that we all experience at some point. Okay, well, at least if you're in the church, you'll experience it at some point, but I don't think we do a very good job talking about it. And that is, what does it look like to leave well? Leaving well isn't just leaving a church. It can be leaving a ministry role. It can be stepping away from leadership, changing seasons, or even navigating relational distance. But transitions get really emotional really fast, and church transitions hit different because church isn't just a building that we attend and come to. It really is full of relationships. It's full of purpose. It's full of belonging. And so when these things shift, it can feel really, really personal. And so we're going to dive into some scripture that talks about the church as a body and a family and a community. And when transition happens, it affects people emotionally and even spiritually, because that is the imagery that we use to describe what a church family looks like. And so today we're not talking about leaving dramatically or pretending hard things never happen. We just want to talk honestly about what it looks like to leave well with wisdom and integrity and health. And so as we get started, Erica, why do you think that church transitions feel so personal and emotionally complicated compared to other types of leaving, like leaving a job that you've been at for a few years that's outside the church or whatever that looks like? Like, why is it so much more personal and emotional when it comes to church transitions?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, church, first of all, is it's more than a place we just go to on Sundays, right? For me, church is the place where I make most of my friends. It's the place I make most of my personal connections. I spend a significant amount of time investing in those friendships and those relationships. And it's more than time, it's my heart, right? I give my whole heart to the people that I go to church with, and to our mission and our purpose. And so I sit through weddings, I sit through baby showers, which I don't always love. I make people food. I invite people into my space, into my home. I pray with people. It's like all of these things are things I do because I have given my heart to this mission and to the people that are around me in our church. And it's just feels deeply personal.
It's almost impossible for it to not feel personal.
Yeah.
Erica and I, we were chatting just before launching into this episode. And, we were talking about how church ministry and being in ministry in a church, it's almost easier to have a paid job somewhere else. It's almost easier just to be like, oh, it's, for me as a pastor on staff, well, not on staff right now at a church, but previously on staff at a church, it's not just a job. It's not just something that we walk into with this expectation of just like transactional relationship of I'm here to give you something and so you're going to give me something back. It is deeply relational and it is deeply personal. And so then when these shifts and changes occur and happen, there's this element of grief involved because nobody's died, but something has still changed or ended that we weren't really ready for. And when we spend so much time doing life together, like you said, these aren't things where it's just like, oh, I'm putting a card in the mail and wishing you a happy birthday, or and we might do that for distance or if we can't get to every single thing. But for the most part, like we're showing up to funerals, we're showing up to weddings, we're showing up to hospitals, we're showing up in the spaces where people need people. And so when those people are no longer there, what's left?
Yeah.
And that's really hard.
It is really hard. It's
And
really hard.
so, I think of the verse in Ecclesiastes where it talks about there being a time for every matter under heaven, a time to plant, a time to uproot, keep, release. And so I do think that scripture acknowledges that seasons of change is just part of being human, and it's part of our human experience. But even healthy transitions still involve grief. And it doesn't automatically mean that something was wrong or that something didn't matter. But when people matter and when that thing is all of a sudden gone or different, there is a pain there and there's a loss associated with it. And so what are some of the losses, Erica, that we have happen during transitions that people don't always recognize? Because it's not always even the person's no longer there, but there are other losses that then trickle in. What would some of those be for you?
Some of it is just seeing people that you think are friends on a regular basis,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think people fully grasp how much their presence impacts other
Mm-hmm.
people. And so when someone is there that you serve alongside on Sunday morning or at youth group or
Mm-hmm.
wherever, they're impacting you, they're influencing you. I even think about like you and I worshiping next to each other on Sunday mornings and
Yeah.
how we are free with our worship together. And I'm like, it's not something we planned or were
Mm-hmm.
intentional about really, but you influenced me and I influenced you. And it's like this thing, then when it's gone, we feel loss, right?
Yeah.
We don't have the things that we enjoy or that
Mm-hmm.
even the faces and the smiles that we're used
Yes.
to when they're gone. So like it's the small things like that
Yep.
that we miss out on. It's also there's people that have contributed in my small groups before, and
Mm-hmm.
I've journeyed with them and I've shared things with them, and then you're like, there's this person that I have shared personal information with who
Mm-hmm.
is now not here,
Right.
and they didn't even say goodbye,
Yeah.
and they hurt me. And so it's like not intentionally, they weren't trying to hurt me intentionally, but
Right.
it hurt that they left.
It hurts. Yeah.
And so there's that loss
Mm-hmm.
that feels a little deeper than maybe just the Sunday morning nuanced things. How what are you thinking? What are some of your ideas?
Yeah. I think that it is, I mean, there's so many ways to feel the absence of that person. And not just the person, but even what they contributed into our lives. Were they a safe place for you to be able to share those things, like you said, in a small group? And now all of a sudden they're not there. And so now who do I confide in, or who do I turn to? Or when I'm walking in and I'm having a really hard day and I know that this person is always there and they give the best hugs, and now all of a sudden they're not there, and I'm looking around, I'm like, oh man, I could really use a hug right now. But who do I go to for that hug? Because that person's no longer there. Or that, again, I think there's so much power in a genuine smile. And so that smiling face, I think I will remember people's smiles, like faces, better than I will remember like their non-smile faces. And so it's those little things along the way, or who am I going to text this thing to that I used to text to, or all of these very different things. And I think part of what makes it harder, especially in a smaller community like ours, is that we still run into a lot of them in grocery stores and at other parties or get-togethers and all these other things. And so now there is this element of awkwardness because I actually don't know how to approach you, and I don't know what to say to you, and I don't know how to be with you now when it seems like you just kind of up and left, and there wasn't there wasn't understanding and there wasn't closure, if you
Yeah.
will, there.
Yeah.
And so I
We,
think that can introduce that element of kind of those secondary losses into it as well. And it makes it harder to then navigate. It makes it harder to then trust other people
mhm.
because we've been hurt in the
Yeah.
past
Yeah.
by it. And it makes it hard, especially being in ministry like you and I have been, to then be able to trust. It's already hard enough finding friends in ministry. And so then when those things happen, it makes it even harder to trust people to
Mhm.
be there for us and to
Yeah.
show up for us in the ways that we need them to.
Yeah. There's also loss when you look at the overall mission of the church, right?
Yeah.
Because we see that this person was really good at teaching this, or this person was really good at leading in this area. And when
Mm-hmm.
they take off, we feel sadness because we feel like the mission of the church is stunted in a
Mm-hmm.
way, or now we got to replace this. Not that they're replaceable, but you know what I mean? We had to find
Mm-hmm.
somebody to fill that role or fill that spot. And it
Mm-hmm.
slows the work of the church down when people are
Mm-hmm.
just moving around and um, going from one place to the next. It's harder to get momentum to move the work of the church forward when
Yeah.
we're seeing those losses within the structure of the church itself and in the mission of the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah. And then it's relational, but it's missional at the same
Yeah.
time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is hard because it's also relational
Yeah.
and missional. And then there's
Yeah.
relationship wrapped up in the mission, and there's
Hmm.
mission wrapped up
Hmm.
in the relationship. And yeah, it gets hard. And so
And it's
as
not always
you
been, sorry, it's
oh no,
not
you're
always
fine.
been the people of the church moving around either. But when Jason and I first started ministry like
Mm-hmm.
26 years ago, it was pretty common for pastors to only last in churches like 3 to 7 years or something like
Yeah,
that.
isn't that wild?
And I'm guessing they were moving around out of hurt and burnout. I mean, in fact, that's what I researched, and it said like they often move because they're burned out,
Yeah.
or they move because they're hurt, and um, and so they would move and they'd have a season of reprieve at the new church,
Yep.
because they're just getting started. And then they would get into another hard season and they would move again. And
Yep.
pastors kind of started this trending of church hopping, right?
Yes.
Um, and so when Jason and I went into ministry, we were like, we want to give our whole selves to this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that means weathering some of those hard seasons and making sure we take care of ourselves so that we don't burn out. And
Right.
um, and not that we haven't transitioned, because we did move to Washington from
Yeah.
Missouri
Yeah.
about 10 years ago this summer. Um, but it's like we want to give our whole selves when we go. And we're not just in this as a job short term. But
Right.
I think pastors kind of started this, I don't know, this idea of church hopping in a sense. Maybe
Yep.
not. Maybe the people were doing it before that. But I do think that it can be both ways. So I don't mean for us to pick on people who are in the church,
No.
but it's like
Yeah.
it goes both ways. It can be leaders, it can also
Absolutely.
be members of the congregation.
Absolutely. I do wonder how much of like a cultural element. Again, I may be speaking out of things I do not know because zero research went into this. But how much of like church leaving culture emerged when there became a prolific amount of churches for somebody to attend?
Oh,
It used to be
yeah.
loosely, I'm going to say used to be, because again, I haven't researched this beyond kind of just what I know through the things that I have organically come across. But it used to be that there wasn't a church on every corner, so to speak, right?
Hmm.
And so your church that you went to was your church that you
It was
went
the
to.
community church.
It was the community church. It was the pastors who came and went, but the people stayed and they were pretty consistent. And so I wonder at what point, as multiple churches popped up into communities, it opened up this avenue of we can just go to the next place or check out that pastor, or I wonder what they're doing at their church, or, oh, I like what I see there and we don't do that here. And so it really did create, not that churches compete with each other. I I would hate that if that were the case.
No, yeah.
But it almost created this sense of competition in a way to draw people into the new and the shiny and like the what's going
Mhm,
on down the street kind of mentality.
mhm,
Or this pastor said something I don't agree with, and so now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go to this next church because
mhm.
I like what their pastor has to say,
Yeah,
until you don't like what their pastor has to say, and then then you go somewhere else again. Or pastors having way more options too, right?
sure.
They don't stay at the same church for 25 years because there's 25 other churches you could go to in the next year, right? Like, and so again, I think it does go both ways, but I do wonder how much like multiple churches popping up in communities did play a part in this ability
Hop
to
around
leave
or to
kind of
move. Yeah.
quickly.
Mhm,
Hmm.
mhm. Yeah, that could be. I don't have the research on that either. Makes sense. And the overall goal is not necessarily to win people to your specific church. It's
No.
we I love this book called Raised to Stay, and the
Yes.
goal
Yeah.
is that people will stay in church, that they
Yes.
will stay plugged in
Yep.
to a fellowship of
Yep.
believers, and that they will continue to serve God and to stay close to God.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter that which specific church they're attending.
Right.
However, um, there's a lot lost when you move around a lot.
There is. And I
So,
do think that it's both ways. It's for the
mhm,
people who end up staying, and it's also for the person who leaves, because they now have to plug in. And we know how hard it is to
mhm,
plug in to community in a regular, like
mhm.
everyday life, right? Like it is hard to plug into community. And so now you've left a church and you have to find that sense of belonging and that sense of community in a new place, in a new environment. And that creates challenges for you as well.
Yeah.
And so as we think about that, like as we think about what draws or pulls or pushes people from one church into another, how do we know the difference between a difficult season that we should work through at our current church and a time or season where it might actually be time to leave?
Yeah, that's hard. I think that I think we have to have some discernment, right? So we need to pray and discern,
Yeah.
like, what is it that is good here? What is very rarely is it everything wrong, right? Very rarely is it all bad.
Right.
But I think there are times where God might be moving us. Sometimes I think like relational situations or differences can be negotiated and should be worked out. I think that we can a lot of times try our best to work those out, and that God can use that to grow us and change us,
Mhm.
and and I think that can be good. Sometimes with long-term conflict, maybe leaving is better. I'm not sure. But I do think like in situations where there might be an abuse of power, um, where someone is creating a culture where people are not being treated correctly or
Yeah.
not being safe, then if if you've done everything you know to how to do to bring that to the attention
Right.
of the leaders in the church, then maybe you would need to move somewhere else or move on.
Mhm.
Um, I do think that there's times where people are in a church body where maybe they're not being included or not being fed, and maybe they need to find belonging there. However,
Mhm.
I think that most often God would probably want them to then step into those spaces and start including others that are like them and develop
Yeah.
them as a leader, or an includer themselves and model. The goal is for us to like to grow in our own faith, right? So it's not,
Mhm.
I don't know. That's just a really hard question. I keep thinking Jason
It
had this
is.
sermon once that was talked about, like pick up a fork. Like you don't get spoon fed, right?
Correct. Yes.
You don't get spoon fed your spiritual life, and so like pick
Yeah.
up a fork and do the work that you need to do. And as long as the church setting is healthy enough to allow for you to continue to grow and to develop
Mhm.
in your spiritual life, I have a hard time thinking that it's good to leave. But I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts about when is it good to stay and when should you leave? I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's actually one of the most frustrating things when people are like, "Well, I'm not being fed there anymore."
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. In the
Yeah.
today, okay, soapbox moment. In today's culture of having constant content your way,
Yeah.
if you are not getting fed, I'm actually going to challenge them back and say, maybe that's not the pastor's responsibility, or maybe there's something else that you could be doing. And
Yes.
so that reason for me, I do struggle with that. And same thing with like I'm not feeling connected or I'm not finding my people.
Hmm.
Relationships are two ways. And I'm not
Yeah.
going to assume that the person saying that is not trying to invest in relationship. I know plenty who do. They're the hard work of investing in relationships that then are not reciprocated. And that is so hard.
So hard.
And yet, I'm going to challenge that if you are wanting or thinking about leaving because you aren't feeling connected to people, have you done what you need to do to try to drive that connection? If
Hmm.
not, you are likely to move into the next space with that same posture and heart and mentality. And then you find yourself leaving and switching churches every couple years because you still haven't actually found what it is that you are looking for, because relationship is built two ways. And so I agree with you. I think that that takes some discernment to be able to say, okay, is this a me problem or is this a church culture problem? Because if it's
Hmm.
a church culture problem, then it might be okay and time
Yeah.
to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But if it's a me problem, I might have to do some work with myself and with the Lord and with other people
Hmm.
to get me to a place where I can be able to stay well. I also think that when we're trying to discern, one of the parts of discernment is not making rash and snap decisions.
Hmm.
And so I think we actually have to slow down enough to process honestly instead of reacting emotionally. When
Yes.
hard things happen, we want to avoid the pain. And so the easiest way to avoid it is to leave it.
Hmm.
And yet that may not actually be the best course of action. And so I think asking ourselves reflective questions like, is this based out of conflict and a moment of conflict, or is this consistently an unhealthy pattern that church leadership exhibits? And this is coming from the perspective of like a congregation
Hmm.
member.
Yeah.
um is it a church, again, a church culture issue, or is it individual people issues? Is it I struggle serving on a team because all team leaders are unclear and hard to navigate and I don't actually know what I'm supposed to be doing? Or is it a specific ministry leader that I am struggling with? Am I being challenged or am I being harmed? Because if I'm not being challenged, there are things I can do for myself to challenge myself and grow in my own thinking and understanding. But am I being harmed is very different than, well, I'm just not being challenged enough. And so I do think that we do have to slow down and process enough to be able to ask the hard questions, even of ourselves. And I would encourage anybody who is thinking about or looking to leave to invite wise and discerning people into that conversation with them. This should not be a decision you make in
I love
isolation.
that. I love that. Thank you very much for putting to words what I was trying to spit out earlier. I'm like, I can hit on a lot of different topics, but yes, that is spot on.
I think we often think of whether or not we stay or go under our own lens and individual, but I do think that we should invite people
I love it. Hmm.
into that practice of discernment and wisdom. And a lot of times, because sometimes we can't assess the situation correctly because of the hurt that we're feeling, or because we think that we're not like we're biased, we're coming into this decision making
Hmm.
biased. And so bringing in somebody who has a history and a pattern of being wise, who's not going to just try to change your mind and talk you into doing whatever they think is right, but who's really going to walk you through some of these discerning questions and the ability to make that decision of, okay, I've actually done the hard work and I still believe that it is the best
Yes.
choice for me to go
Hmm.
elsewhere.
Hmm. I love that. All of that. Very,
And it's
very
hard.
good. Yes, it is hard. Um, I think that that what you've said also applies to like not just the people of the congregation, but the people of the leadership of the church also.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you choosing to leave? Are you just burned out? Are you tired? Are you worn
Correct.
out? Are
Mm-hmm.
you just having a hard time with a couple of people?
Yep.
Is that the reason? Or is there an ongoing issue there? Or
Yeah.
maybe like God's got a new mission for you,
Right.
and that's okay
Right.
too. But
Yeah.
also inviting people into that
Yes.
journey and praying through it when you're getting ready to
Yes.
transition.
And I
Which,
know like there have been some hard seasons in ministry where I have literally cried, like real tears, not figurative
yes,
tears,
yes.
where I've literally cried and being like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is
Mm-hmm.
really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so glad that in those moments, I didn't cave to what my emotional state would have said, like,
Mm-hmm.
then just go find somewhere else. I am
Yes.
so glad that I did not do that because it wouldn't have been leaving in an honoring way
Mm-hmm.
at all. I would have
Yeah.
left hurt and I would have gone hurt and I would have been planted somewhere else hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not, as a church leader, that is not the type of leadership
Mm-hmm.
that I would want to end on. And nor is it the type of leadership I would want to bring into another place. And so, not saying I've got it all together and I know all the right things to do, but I am
Oh.
so glad that in those moments where things have gotten really, really hard and the only thing I wanted to do was walk away, I'm really glad that there was somebody else who was wiser than me who helped me identify and see would I be leaving for the right
Mm-hmm.
reasons. And that is the reason I stayed.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I have, in both churches that we've been in, we've had pastors who've come to our church who are in seasons of repair and healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also a really good thing when they do have to leave, right? Out
Yeah.
in a time of pain or hurt from their
Yes.
role.
Because sometimes that happens.
Yeah, and it's really hard, I'm sure, because your livelihood a lot of times is tied up in
Yep.
your ministry. But to take time to heal, to
Mm-hmm.
reconnect with Jesus, to put your head on straight,
Yeah. Yeah.
and before you move into another leadership role,
Yep.
because I've read comments on forums. I've talked to ministers and their wives
Mm-hmm.
who come straight out of painful situations, and they're not ready to lead. They're not
No.
in a place where they can see the goodness of God, see that people are mostly good, just doing their
Yeah.
best in life.
Yeah.
And when you can't do that, you're not ready to take on a leadership role in a
Right.
new place. So
Right.
I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
And I do think that like we see evidence of what does like leaving look like in scripture too, which is why I love that we can go to scripture for guidance even
Mm-hmm.
in this way. And some of the things that stick out to me is that, you know, Paul left cities. Like there were places he literally wouldn't go to go do ministry in.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus released people. He was constantly sending people out to go do ministry. Barnabas and Paul had to separate ministry paths at one point because of a
Yeah.
hard relationship between the two of them. And yet they were able to come back together at some point and press forward into the mission. And so not all transition is failure,
No.
right? Not all leaving is an indicator that there is something really, really wrong. Sometimes there are good and valid and strong reasons for why people might want to leave. I mean, I think of one if you have a really mission mindset or you feel very called to mission work, and then by mission work I do mean like work outside the community in which you are
Yeah.
in.
Mm-hmm.
Going to a church that affirms mission work and being able to feel as if you are getting equipped in the ways that you need to be equipped to go out and do what God is calling you to do, by all
Great.
means, like
Yeah.
go
Mm-hmm.
seek that out if you're not going to get it at the church that you are in. And that does not mean the church you are in is failing. It means that you need something different than what your church can provide. If I think like for us at Ridgefield, we have a huge community footprint here. If you want a church that is plugged into the local community deeply, you're going to find that here. But
Mm-hmm.
if that's not important to you, you're going to come in and you're going to be like, man, why aren't they doing the same thing for Vancouver or for, Kalama or for, wherever X, Y, and Z, because we should be doing more than what we're doing. Well, no, we're just doing what we feel we should be doing with what God has called us to do here in
Here.
this community. And so go find a place where they have the bandwidth and the mission mindset to invest in multiple communities, if that is what you are like, there are reasons why people do leave for valid reasons.
Sure.
And we see that in scripture even.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. And relationships are sometimes temporary, right? Or seasonal. We've talked about that in previous episodes. And and as long as it's God led and for healthy reasons, then I'm sure God will continue to bless that.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just hard. And then when we start talking about like, do we leave or do we not leave after that discerning process, there are healthy ways and unhealthy ways to leave ministry, to leave the church, to leave leadership, whatever that looks like. I do truly believe that there are unhealthy and healthy ways. And so we're going to dive into some of the unhealthy ways first, because I think we should end on the healthy things.
On the positive note.
Yeah. And so because again, you've been in ministry a really long time, but what are some unhealthy ways that you've seen people leave church spaces or leadership positions or just church community as a whole?
Yeah. Well, as I was thinking about this question, I was reflecting back on all of the years of ministry and trying to think of what was the hardest part for me as someone who stayed. And I think what's hardest is when people disappear. They just leave without saying anything. I've been thinking, ghosting is what they call it now. And I have been thinking about it in terms of not just myself, but even other staff members, other members of our congregation, and how painful it is when people just disappear. I've been thinking through like the last 26 years. And I mean, aside from like moving or going into a new role or something like that, I think I have gotten maybe one, maybe two text messages that somebody is leaving, and without much of an explanation to why, but just saying, I just want to let you know. Other than that, people have just left, and all of a sudden they're not at church anymore, or they've disappeared. And it's really hard because I'm left feeling sad and not knowing what happened. And and I think through, like I said, I've invited these people into my home. I have taken them meals, and I've served alongside them on teams. And all of a sudden they're not there anymore, and they didn't tell me why. They didn't explain anything. They didn't say goodbye or say thank you or anything. You know? And this ghosting, it leaves me feeling very hurt. And I think it leaves other people feeling very hurt, because as I've had conversations with people around our church over the years, they all ask, where is so-and-so? And when you tell them that they left, they're like, what? They didn't even say anything. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
So what I have found to be true, and I think this is what people are thinking, they think if they have a conversation with Jason, who in every church I've attended is the lead pastor, but just they have a conversation with the lead guy sometimes, most of the time, right? They'll maybe like have a conversation with him and assume that then that means they've said goodbye to everybody.
Right.
And that is not the case. Jason knows and he'll have information, and sometimes he'll share that with other people, but but that's not the same as saying goodbye to the people who personally have invested in you.
Right.
And I think of that because being his wife, I think they think I'm covered in that.
Right.
I'm like, but he didn't
like anything I tell Jason, he's just going to tell Erica anyway.
But I'm like, he didn't sit through that baby shower. I did. So come talk to me or whatever.
Yeah.
And
he didn't make that casserole.
I know he didn't make that casserole. I'm not saying he doesn't.
He might have made the pie.
Yeah, it's true. He does make pies. But they assume that they're covered or it's good or whatever. And and then what I realized, now that we are at a church with more staff members, is there are leaders in these departments who have also invested in these people but they think that they've told Jason so that they're good, and not
Right.
realizing that the children's pastor invested a ton in their kids. The
Mm-hmm.
youth pastor invested a ton. The care pastor prayed with them and showed up at the hospital, and that all of them have given their hearts to these people because
Yeah.
we are in a church family together. And so then they
Yes.
just take off, and it leaves all of them feeling confused. And that's just staff. That's not including the other leaders that you've served beside, or
Right.
the people that have showed up for things. And so
Right.
this is my soapbox, if you can't tell. So I'm like, when people ghost, I don't think they realize how many people are left feeling hurt
Yeah.
and confused, and it's really hard. Yeah.
It is. And that is definitely a common pattern. And sometimes I wonder, I don't think people ghost with the intention of hurting people at
No, they
all.
don't.
They
No.
just don't know that they know how to have the conversations, and they
Mhm.
don't know how to step into the uncomfortable space
Mhm.
that conversation would include. And so we avoid the things that make us uncomfortable. And
Yes, we
so
do.
it's easier
Mhm.
just to be like, okay, bye. But then
I'm
again,
out.
like we said,
Mhm.
we run into them in the store, or we see them at a mutual friend's party, or, investing or doing mission together somewhere else in the community. And it becomes really awkward
Mhm.
really fast. And so
Mhm.
another unhealthy pattern that I have seen is, I mean, I want to call it gossip, but we're going to call it public venting
Okay.
instead, which is probably maybe a little bit of gossip. But the idea of like publicly venting to other people instead of having the direct conversations. And so if something
Mhm.
has bothered you, or there is a difference of missional alignment, or you just feel like you need something different, or whatever
Mhm.
that is. So oftentimes we go to other people to try to recruit them into our hurt, to be on
Mhm.
our side and on our team. And in doing so, we're actually introducing a lot of stress and tension in the people who choose to stay.
Yeah.
And then the narrative shifts very quickly into one person's perspective, because the church isn't going to publicly come out and be like, well, no, that's not how that happened, or whatever, that we're not going to defend ourselves like
No.
as
Mhm.
leaders in the church. And so the people who leave hurt, publicly speaking about whatever it is that happened, they get to drive the narrative
Yeah.
to something that may not actually be as fully encompassing the whole story and the
Mhm.
whole truth.
Yeah.
And so I think that is another thing that can then cause a lot of pain and heartache
Mhm.
for people left behind. I mean, I've had people ask me after people have left, like, well, was there anything else going on? Because I just feel like there's
Mhm.
something more here.
There's always more. There's
What do you
always
say to that?
I know.
Right?
But
Like,
there's always more perspectives to a situation, right? Than one
yeah.
person's perspective, one person's story.
Yeah, they said
Uh-huh.
that they just wanted to go to the new church or whatever, but
Mhm.
I think that there's something else happening. Like,
Yeah.
what is that? And I'm like,
I know.
I don't know what to
And
tell
I do think
you.
when people are talking, there's very rarely malice in their heart. Like, I don't
No, I don't
think
think so at all.
they're trying to cause division or
No.
trying to stir up problems for
Correct.
people. I
Correct.
think they're trying to work through their own stuff. They're trying to heal.
Yeah.
But it does, people don't realize how much when they process their own
Mhm.
stuff with people who maybe aren't in a position or place to carry it well, um,
It then
they
influences that
it
other person
influences
too.
the other person. And
Yeah.
so, like, I remember just being trained in, I think actually Beth Moore did a Bible study talking about like trauma and how we can like deal with our trauma. Um, and we can like spread it around on people, and then
Yep.
they have some trauma too. It's like
Yep.
we when we share a story, it's like, let's give you a little bit of my trauma and you get a little bit.
Mhm.
And instead of like doing the healthy work on our own.
Yeah.
And so even as a counselor, I'm like, I've got stories I could share. I've got pictures of stories of things that people have told me
Yeah.
in my head, right? And I am doing that for a career. and that's okay. And I've learned how to handle that and learned how
Yeah.
to sit with it.
Yeah.
But if I went and told like people the same things or like little pieces of those things, then they have to carry around those little pieces of trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying you can't have a good friend that you work with and process things with, but I think these people sometimes talk to whoever will listen or
Yes.
whoever they're standing next to at an event or whatever, trying to work out the situation or trying to make sense of it or trying to process their feelings around it, not realizing the damage that they're doing.
Right. Because again, they're
Mhm.
recruiting them into their own herd, like
Yeah.
getting people,
Mhm.
and again, not getting people on your side because you're trying to prove a point necessarily. And maybe it's gotten to that point.
Yeah.
Maybe you have tried to have the difficult conversations and maybe you've done all the right things and maybe it's not working out the way that you anticipated it to. And so now you are maybe a little bit more on the mad hurt side than you are
Yeah.
just the hurt side. And I don't think it is, again, to like wage a war against anybody, but it is that recruitment into hurt, which then shifts and changes the perspective that the other person has. And so
Mhm.
now where they had no problem with anybody, now they're
Yeah.
seeing problems that aren't theirs to own. And so instead of just walking alongside and carrying it with you, they're now owning that as if it is their own hurt when it
Mhm.
is not.
Mhm.
And then that is, I think, sometimes what causes some of the ripple effect of like multiple people leaving from the same like friend group or the same serving team or whatever that looks like. Like that, I think, is what causes some of those ripple effects. You have like the core person who has the main issue or whatever, and then as they vent or share or process through, that ripple effects outwards, and then
Yeah.
we end up losing more people and more relationships because of that.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, like we
Mhm.
have seen that through different
Mhm.
seasons where it has been not just one or two people leaving, but sometimes entire families or
Yeah.
entire, you know,
Mhm.
serving teams or,
Yeah.
and it's
For
hard.
example, in 2020,
Yes.
we had this thing called COVID.
Yep.
And and as people were trying to process with
Yep.
what they believed and what they thought about things and where they stood on whatever the issues were, right? They
Right.
kind of took teams of people with them sometimes and
Yeah.
groups of people
Yeah.
and it really
Again, not
polarized things.
intentionally, I don't
No,
think,
no, I think
but
everybody's trying to work through it.
unintentionally.
Yeah. But
Unintentionally
also
for
we
sure.
felt a wave of pain and loss in the churches because of COVID. And
Yeah. So much.
yeah.
Yeah. So if those
So,
are the unhealthy ways people leave, how can we, because we know that sometimes leaving is going to happen and we want people to be able to feel like they can, like we're not chaining people to the pews here.
no, no,
Like, you
no.
know, like
Sometimes it's good that they leave, right? It's actually
yes.
healthy. So yeah.
Yes. And so like we're not trying to like kidnap you and keep you here, but like how do we help navigate? Like what does, for the listener listening, Erica, who is like, I am struggling with, do I leave or do I not leave? And I've done the work to identify maybe I do. What does it actually mean to live or not live well, to leave well? Especially if there's hurt,
Mhm,
disappointment, or unresolved tension that is involved.
mhm.
Because I do think that sometimes people hear, like, well, you have to leave well. And it means that they have to kind of pretend that everything is fine or they have to avoid the conflict completely together. And so, like, maybe leaving well to them is I just don't say anything and I leave.
Yeah.
But that's not actually healthy. And so, what does leaving well look like?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I think of is like honest and clear communication is
Yeah.
key, right? Ambiguity and a lack of clarity leaves people making assumptions and interpreting things and jumping to
Mm-hmm.
conclusions and a lot of times assuming the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think communicating with people is good. And then like I said, when you just leave and people don't know that why you left or what's
Mm-hmm.
going on, that's why it's happening, right? It's ambiguous. And so people
Mm-hmm.
don't know what's going on. So they're trying to fill in the gaps and make sense of it in their own minds.
Yeah.
And it is painful. So you want to make sure that you're being clear in your communication. And also pausing and stopping and looking around at the people who impacted you in that environment. And having those conversations, those weird, hard
Yep.
conversations. But it's like saying thank you, explaining that you're leaving, praying together so that we all can remember that we're all one body.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all still making our way to heaven, and I'll see you there. It's just like, it's just really important. I just think of I have a friend who sat with another friend in a really hard season, and then the second friend just took off, and that one friend was left feeling like, what happened?
Yeah.
And I didn't understand where are they? And I'm like, think about those friends. Think about those people who have been with you as you've walked through surgeries and losses and funerals, and showed up for you when you were sick and your kids had a baby shower, and all. Think about those people and then have those conversations and at least thank them and let them know what your plans are.
Yeah.
I just think that's huge.
Yeah. I agree with that. I also hope that people, when they hear leave well, they don't just assume that means suppressing the pain or staying silent forever.
Sure.
Or and I don't even know what staying silent forever would even mean or look like, but that they can't share some of that with other people. And it doesn't mean that you're pretending hurt didn't happen, or that things weren't hard, because sometimes that is what ends up happening, and it's hard. And so we leave hard and difficult situations. I think it's important, though, to also understand that those things can be true, and also we shouldn't blow everything up on our way out either.
No, yeah.
And I think people tend to see it one way or the other. I have to go silently and pretend nothing happened, or I have to tell everybody so that everyone knows exactly why I'm leaving. And there is more nuance to that. And I think that there is more, it's harder than just picking one side or the other and camping there. And so I actually looked at quite a few, because I was like, man, I don't even know how to put into words what leaving well looks like beyond some of the stuff that you've already talked about. And so I did look up quite a few different articles and church leaders who have podcasts and stuff like that on specifically leadership and stuff in the church. And so I kind of put them in groups, but the first one was to leave graciously. And that means talking to church leadership. And very similar to what you said earlier, that doesn't just mean the senior pastor. That means, especially now, if the senior pastor is the only one that you have,
there you go.
then yes, by all means, talk to the senior pastor. We operate with a board. And so are there, I know in smaller churches that only have one or two staff members, the board takes a heavier hand in overall church leadership. And so are there people on the board that you might need to talk to? Are there other ministry leaders or department leaders or staff pastors who have walked with and navigated life with you? And maybe you need to talk to them about that as well. The other one is don't gossip. I think that there are ways that we can be truthful and honest about what we are going through and experiencing, and having the ability to tell our friends, serving teams, and group members without bringing that gossip element into it, without bringing that kind of trauma vomiting into it, or the trauma dumping, I'll say, onto other people. I think that there are ways to communicate with other people as you leave. Don't burn the bridges, You don't even realize you're burning bridges. I think, and that's the hard part. But when you leave in the unhealthy ways that we talked about, that is burning bridges. And so it makes it really awkward and uncomfortable when you do run into people. And so again, I think it goes back to that leaving graciously. Everything falls kind of under that. And you can be honest without being bitter, and you can be clear about why you left without pressing into the anger and the bitterness and the frustration that might have driven you into making that decision.
I
And
love
so
that.
I think that there are so many little things that we can do. And I would say that all of that falls under after you've done the hard work of discerning whether or not you should leave.
Yeah. Yes.
Because if you haven't done that part, it doesn't matter what you
Hmm.
do after that, really.
Hmm. Yeah.
You're less likely to leave well if you haven't done the discerning work to figure out if you should have actually gone or not.
True. That's very, very true. Also, leaders sometimes leave, right?
Yep.
And so we need to talk through that. I was listening to a podcast about a pastor who sat down and wrote goodbye letters to
Mm.
people,
Mm-hmm.
and thank you cards. And when Jason and I, we've only left one church, but we celebrated all. Well, first of all, we had lots of individual conversations with people. We spent
Mm-hmm.
time with people. We tried our best to leave well, and we had like a celebration and met with
Mm-hmm.
people and shared our thoughts and feelings about leaving them. And
Yeah.
because I feel like we tried to leave well. Not that there wasn't still pain and hurt there.
Right.
When they had their big celebration, I think it was 30 years of ministry celebration, they invited us back and we were able to come back,
Yeah.
and all of those friendships and relationships were still positive and good.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say all, most of them were, and
Yeah.
there's some people that were still hurt that we left, but it's like
Sure.
mostly good. And so it matters too how pastors leave.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, or leadership leaves.
Yeah.
They just, when you're burned out, it's hard to leave well.
Mm-hmm.
And so making sure that you're in a good place when you leave so that you can say goodbye.
Yeah.
Well,
And I will tell you, even being in a non-burned out place at this point and still having to say goodbye is still really hard.
Really hard.
It
Yeah.
is really hard. And I'll just speak for my own. By the time this airs, I'll have fully transitioned out and I will be literally living in Utah. And I would like to think that I left as well as I could. And doing that was awful. Like, because there were so many days where I was just like, can I just get in my car and leave? Like, this is really hard and I don't like this. I don't like saying goodbye. I don't like crying almost every single day because of what I'm leaving. I don't like saying goodbye to my friends and my people. And it is hard. And so you try really hard to leave the best way that you can.
And that's hard when you're thinking back of memories, right? You're sharing like the fun things you've gone through, the hard things you've gone through and overcame with the things you appreciate about those people. And so it's a time of reflection, and it makes you sad because now you're leaving those very dear people and those dear friends and memories behind.
Yeah.
So,
I do. I remember when Jason asked, like, what day do you want to have your going away party? And I was like, we do not need a going away party. I was like, that sounds like torture to me. And, it's funny because I always tell people who have lost loved ones, like, the memorial service, the celebration of life, the funeral is not for the person who died. It is for the people who were left there. And he, in all of his compassion and wisdom, just pretty much threw those words back into my face. He was like, the goodbye party is not just for you and Nate. And it is. It's a way that we get to celebrate you, but it's for the people who want to be able to say goodbye to you well. And I was like, fine. You can have this stupid party.
Yes.
That is not my thing. I'm like, let me just link out in the middle of the night. And man, it is, there's that temptation. There's that temptation to just go away from it. And that's even there, even when you are trying really hard to leave well. And so, like, I do recognize that this is so much more complex and complicated than just do the hard work and make a good decision.
I know.
But life is relational and we are relational beings. And that is, something that we talk about a lot, is that connection piece and that belonging and the community that we build with each other. And relationship is so much part of that. And whenever there is relationship, there is the capacity and the propensity for hurt to be there. And so it's, how do we navigate that in healthy ways so that we can leave as healthy as possible? And that's whether you're a leader or not.
And I think better we get at leaving when we need to leave. And when that is true of all of your friends and the community you're around. And so as we get better at it, it makes it so that we're willing to keep trying and investing in future relationships.
Yes.
Right? I feel like the hurt of someone taking off and ghosting you makes it harder to want to keep investing. Where if somebody leaves and has a conversation with you, you go, okay, well, I pray the best for them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep trying with the people that are around me now. So, yeah.
So it's hard.
It is.
We do recognize that. All right. To close out our time together, we have our somehow together question
of the day. Yay.
I can never remember. I'm like, I said, whatever. One of these days we're going to get t-shirts with that acronym on there. But what is, since we're talking about goodbyes, what is the most awkward goodbye, or one of, it doesn't have to be the most, but what is an awkward goodbye that you remember having?
I don't remember very many awkward goodbyes, mostly because I just assume the best of people and assume that they assume the best of me most of the time.
That's lovely.
But
maybe I'm the awkward one. Maybe that's what makes the goodbyes awkward.
No, it's not.
It's me.
But it's not you. It's not you. But I was thinking about this, and when I was growing up in a small town, I remember my mom telling me to leave, and I remember thinking, I am out of here. I am leaving. I am leaving this town behind, I'm just out. And I was
the dust from my tires.
Yes.
is going to be in my rearview mirror.
And as I've aged, I feel bad that I just left without even any consideration about how far I was going to be from my family and the people I loved very much. And I remember going back once, like, I don't know, in college, talking to some people, and I'm like, I would never move back there, and not even realizing that they had moved back there, like, that they were living back there. I'm like, I forgot you guys came back.
And I'm only slightly judging you for it.
No, but I was a young adult, so probably. But now, as a person who is about ready to have kids move away, I'm like, oh, that was really unkind of me. And like, not that you can't move away from your family if you need to, but
right.
My mentality is very different. Now I'm kind of like, I kind of wish I could move back to Iowa, and see, live near family and stuff. Yeah. So I feel like I kind of didn't say goodbye well as a young adult when I left town. I'm just like, I'm out.
Sure.
See ya. So anyway, that's my thought. What's your memory?
Oh, the fact that you have to dig for one really does say more about me than it says about you. Cause I'm like, which awkward goodbye do you want? I have so many, but one that popped out was we were at your house for dinner, and there was another couple as well. And Noah was there, and we were eating dinner, and we were having a good time. We played a game afterwards. Anyway, dinner party, whatever, wraps up, and it's time to say goodbye. Well, we're all pretty huggy people. And so we're going around and we're hugging each other, and Nate's hugging Jason, and our friends hug Jason, and I'm hugging you, and I'm hugging our friend. Like, I hug our friend. Like, it's just, we're all hugging. And then all of a sudden I like turn to hug the next person, and it's Jason. And I freeze, and I'm like,
and he's your boss. And
he's my boss. Yes. Yeah. Let's make that clear. I'm like, we don't do this. Like, we don't hug. And I literally, those words come out of my mouth. Like, and that makes it 10 times more awkward than just being like, okay, well, bye. No, I'm like, we don't do this. Are we changing that? Like, do we hug now? And I just kept making it worse with like the words that, and I remember at one point thinking to myself, just stop talking and say goodnight and walk away. But I could not do that.
That's funny.
It turned into like the most awkward. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't think we're going to do that. So I'll see you tomorrow.
That's funny.
And it was fine. And I mean, he was laughing. I was laughing. I can't remember who was standing next to me on the other side, but they were laughing. And I was just like, this this is super awkward.
Yeah. I do.
I think that's me. Like, I'll just call it out as being awkward, I guess.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, this is
That's
weird.
so funny.
So,
I do have sometimes where I'll go to reach the door in my office as a counselor. Like
Yeah.
I'll go open the door for people, and I think they think I'm putting my arm out for a hug. And so then they will like come and hug me, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I guess we're hugging right now, and I'll hug them, and then they walk out. So that's kind of awkward. I don't mean anything by it. I just am opening the door and my arm's up to open the door, and so
yeah, you're like, okay, I guess we're doing it.
I guess I'm hugging you, but
that is so funny. I've said I love you to a parent before on the phone, like who called about their kid, and we're just talking, and it was a male parent.
Yeah, you're like, love you.
We go to hang up. I'm like, okay, well, love you. And he's like, love you too. Wait, what?
That's funny.
And we both just like lost it. We're like, okay, well, I'll see you at pickup. Like, what do you say?
That's hilarious.
So I have lots of awkward goodbyes. So we would love to hear more people's awkward goodbyes. I'd love to not be alone in this.
Yes, so. Let's hear them.
Yeah. Anyway, that was such a good conversation, Erica. Thank you so much. And we will chat with you guys next time.
Bye.
Thanks for spending time with us today. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone you want to help feel a little less alone. And as you go into your week, ask yourself, where in my life do I need togetherness right now? And until next time, we are somehow together.